If you're planning a move to Spain and you're thinking, how on earth am I going to get my fur baby all the way there safely? Well, this video is for you. You know, when my family moved to Los Angeles in the late 80s, yep, I'm that old, we couldn't take our dog Mingo with us, and that really hurt. We really missed him. He was a part of the family. And so when I started helping people move to Spain, I just figured, well, people are gonna leave their pets at home, I guess. I was so wrong. Around 50% of the people in my Move to Spain programs are actually bringing their pets to Spain. And not just one pet or two pets, often 5 dogs or 3 cats and 2 dogs, or even a horse. I've had multiple people in my programs moving to Spain with their horse. So in short, you won't just be limited to wonderful cat cafes like this one to get your furry fix. You can bring all your pets with you. It's not unusual anymore. And my goal in this video is to show you how it's very doable, to give you practical advice, and to show you how you can bring your furry family members safely to Spain. So I'm gonna take the mystery out of this process. I'm gonna take you through the paperwork requirements, the timing, which can be challenging, and we're also gonna look at the ways to get your pets here. We're gonna look at going in the cabin of the aircraft, in the hold of the aircraft, charter flights, by boat, yep, the Queen Mary 2, all the different options. And to make this as practical as possible, I'm also going to talk to a pet relocation specialist, someone who knows the ins and outs, the nitty-gritty of this really fluid aspect of your relocation to Spain, who can give you some tips on things to be aware of pre-move, to avoid, and help you really get your pet here safely. But before we get to that, let's start with one area that can be really confusing, and that's the paperwork and the timing. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so before we kick off, I think it's worth saying that the process that I'm going to outline in this video is specific to moving with dogs, cats, and ferrets, because those are the pets that are covered in the sort of standard bringing your pets to Spain EU guidelines. Now, if you're bringing a pet that is another kind of animal, a rabbit, a reptile, a horse, yep, a lot of people, well, not a lot, but people do move with horses, then you're gonna wanna check the requirements specifically because they will change. So I just wanted to headline that to give you a heads up so you know the framework we're working in, and you know if you've got a different pet, you're gonna have to check out the details specifically. Okay, so to kick off, assuming you're coming from a country, a so-called listed country, one of the countries that is most commonly where the audience of this channel is from, USA, Canada, Australia, UK, then you're gonna need 3 key components or elements to bring your pet into the EU, into Spain. 1, an ISO compliant microchip. 2, a valid and up-to-date rabies vaccine. And 3, the EU Animal Health Certificate that documents that the previous 2 are correctly implemented and administered. So let's walk through the different elements there and break it down. So first of all, the vet that you're gonna need. So just be careful here because your vet is gonna need to be licensed and regulated as per your country's, regulatory framework for vets, so that that vet is qualified to fill out the EU Animal Health Certificate. This form that's going to need to be endorsed by the competent body in your country and is going to need to travel in physical form with the pet when the pet is coming into Spain. Examples of this are vets recognized or regulated under the USDA in the States, the CFIA in Canada, for example. EU rules require that a licensed vet completes each step in this process and fills out the EU health certificate, this key form. Not all vets are going to be licensed to be able to complete that form, so double check that first. Okay, next, the ISO microchip. So your pet needs to be microchipped with a microchip that meets the EU's technical standards. It's a specific ISO compliant microchip. If your pet has another type of microchip, ideally you get the pet re-chipped with an ISO compliant microchip. Now, a key thing here is the timing of the rabies vaccine. We're going to talk about the rabies vaccine in a moment, but the rabies vaccine must be administered after the pet is microchipped with the compliant microchip, okay? So that's key in the order of things. Correct microchip and then rabies vaccine. So now the rabies vaccine. In short, your pet, dog, cat, ferret, has to have its rabies vaccination up to date. And the devil is in the details on this one. So the pet can't be vaccinated with the rabies vaccination when it's under 12 weeks of age. And once the rabies vaccine is administered, assuming it's the first one, then there's a period of 21 days that you need to wait before the pet can enter the EU, effectively for the vaccine to be effective. So in short, the pet is only considered legally vaccinated for rabies after that 21-day period wait. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that initial rabies vaccine only lasts for 1 year, at which point the pet needs to have its rabies vaccine boosted. Now, I know a lot of you know all about this because obviously you're vaccinating your pets, but just to make it clear. And here's a little spot where people can get, things can come undone. So there needs to be continuity of vaccination between primary rabies vaccine and boosters. So if you have the primary rabies vaccine, it lasts for 1 year, and then the boosters last for 3 years. But there can't be any gaps between vaccine and booster. So if there's a gap in the vaccination record, then effectively the booster becomes the primary vaccine, and you have to wait 21 days for the pet to be legally considered vaccinated for entry into the EU. Now, the other thing to be aware of is I'm talking about countries that are so-called listed under the EU rules for bringing in animals. So there are other countries that are not on the list, and these are countries that are considered to have a higher risk of rabies, in short. And so if you're coming from one of these countries, then your pet has to pass a rabies antibody test. Now, there are some important details around timing for this test, and I'm going to put the information down below because it's quite specific. But in short, you want to check if the country you're coming from is so-called unlisted, in which case this additional requirement is there. If you're coming from, say, the United States, the UK, Canada, which are countries that a lot of the audience is from, then you don't need to take this rabies test. You just need to make sure your vaccination is up to date. Okay, so the vet appointment. You arrive at the vet appointment, and what happens? What is the vet checking for? So the vet's going to check your animal's eyes, mouth, general health, temperature, heart, things like that. But importantly, they're going to check the pet has the correct microchip and that the rabies vaccination is up to date. And based on that, they're going to fill out the EU Animal Health Certificate. This is this key form so that you can bring your pet into the EU, into Spain. They're going to fill that out. The certificate, the EU Health Certificate, filled out by the vet, must now be endorsed by the relevant body in your country. As I mentioned, the USDA in the US, the CFIA in Canada, for example. Okay, the government endorsement. Now, I want to talk about timing here. I'm going to mention this in a couple of different places because it's important and it can be confusing. So the general rule is that the vet visit and the endorsement of the certificate must happen within 10 days of your pet's entry into the EU. All has to happen within those 10 days, which I know is kind of stressful, right? Because you're moving countries. If you're from the US, you got a little bit of a reprieve because you can do the vet visit 30 days beforehand, and then the endorsement must happen 10 days beforehand. Now, obviously, how the endorsement happens is going to depend on each country, but just to highlight the US aspect, in the US, it's the vet who uploads the health certificate to the USDA's online platform so that it is then endorsed. It's not you that uploads it. I'm talking about the US here. So what happens, you go to your vet, you get the health certificate filled out, and then the vet will then upload it to the USDA's platform, and then it will sit in a queue effectively until 10 days before you're going to be entering the EU. And at that point, it will be endorsed within that window. Now, as I say, it's going to vary depending on your country. So you want to check the details of how the endorsement happens depending on your country. And there's going to be information about this. Plenty of people will have moved from your country with pets to Spain, to the EU. So far, we've been talking about this health certificate in the context of getting it filled out and getting it endorsed. But also you need to have a physical copy of it. And that physical copy, not a PDF on your phone or anything like that, it has to be a physical copy of the endorsed certificate, must travel with the pet to Spain, to the EU. Now, what is important here is I didn't say it has to travel with you. Generally, depending on how you're traveling to Spain, you will be traveling with your pet. So if it's in the cabin, for example. But if your pet is going cargo, we'll talk about ways of getting your pet to Spain, but if it's going cargo, then you may not be flying with your pet. The health certificate has to be with your pet, actually, not with you. Often, that's the same thing. but not always. So just be aware of that. Another important timing aspect to be aware of is that you and your pet must travel within 5 days of each other. If there is a larger gap than that in days, it will be considered a commercial move of your pet, which means more paperwork, more inspections, and more expensive. So you want to travel within 5 days. It can be you or it can be a nominated person. But this is key, this 5-day rule. So just keep that in mind when you're planning the timing of when you and your pet or pets are going to be traveling to Spain. And something else I just wanted to mention is the EU pet passport. I think some people think that the pet passport is actually what you need to bring your pet into the EU, but the EU pet passport is actually something that you get once you're in the EU and facilitates travel with your pet within the EU, assuming their rabies vaccinations, etc., are up to date. And it's something you can get from your vet once you're living in Spain. And I just wanted to say, if you're finding the level of detail in this video a little overwhelming, I get it. I've created a cheat sheet for you that covers the key points that I'm talking about in this video. So if you head to spainrevealed.com/pets, that's pets with an S, then you can download that cheat sheet, which effectively covers the core information that I'm delivering this video, but you get it in a concise written form. And I think that's going to be helpful. Okay, so getting your pet to Spain, right? This is the one that understandably causes a lot of concern. These are your babies, right? This is your baby. You want to make sure that they're safe, that they're going to be well treated, that they're not going to be distressed. So broadly speaking, there are 5 different ways to bring your pet to Spain. There is in cabin in an aircraft, obviously. There is in the hold of the aircraft, and there's actually a couple of subcategories there of checked luggage and cargo. The third one is charter flights. Charter flights are becoming more and more popular. The fourth one is by sea, by boat. We'll talk about that option. And the last one is by road. So by road, obviously, if you're coming from the UK, for example, or somewhere else where you can get to the EU by land, effectively. Now, which route is right for you and your pet is really gonna depend on the circumstances. I would say there's 3 things here to keep aware of. There's gonna be your pet's size, temperament, breed. There's gonna be your budget and your route. And there's also just gonna be what feels right for you and what gives you the most sense of control in this process and what sets you at ease, because what sets you at ease is very likely to set your pet at ease. So let's break down the different options and go through into each of them in more detail. So in cabin, right? For many people, flying with your pet in cabin is kind of the dream option because you've got your pet there, you can see them, they can see you, and it feels like that is always going to be the best way. But I think what's important to understand is post-COVID, a lot of airlines or airlines generally are becoming stricter about allowing pets to fly with their owners in cabin. So you're going to find that there's a huge variety of what airlines allow depending on the airline, but even within airlines, depending on the airport and depending on the route. And here's some general guidelines that you need to be aware of. If you're flying with your pet in the cabin, one, there's going to be size and weight limits. So look really carefully at the fine print of the airline and specifically check the route around the size and weight limits. Also, your pet is going to need to be in a soft-sided carrier, and you want to check the size requirements for the soft-sided carrier as well, and that's going to go under the seat in front of you. Effectively, that's where it's going to be. Generally, often people think, well, I'll just fly business class, would be great. Broadly speaking, and again, there are so many kind of different rules depending on the airline, but broadly speaking, pets are not allowed to fly in cabin with their owners in business and first class. So in most cases, you have to fly economy if you want to fly with your pet in cabin. There are exceptions, but just to be aware, don't assume you can just get all the space in business class. And the last one is the general rule is 1 pet per passenger. So if you've got 2 cats, then generally you're going to need 2 people. If you've got 3 cats and there's 2 of you flying, then it might mean that one of those cats, or potentially all if you decide to do that, are going to have to go in the hold or through another route. So generally speaking, 1 pet per passenger. And I want to reiterate that you need to check not just the airline, but also what is allowed depending on the route and depending on the airport, because there's a lot of inconsistency here. So you want to check and double check just to be sure. And so here are some tips to set yourself and your pet up for success when it comes to in-cabin travel. So 1, you want to book as early as possible because many airlines have a limit on the number of pets that are actually allowed in the cabin. If there's 4 pets allowed in the cabin and those are already booked out, then there's just no more pets allowed in the cabin. So if you come and book too late, that can be a risk. So just be aware of that. 2, you want to prioritize direct flights when it comes to in-cabin travel. I mean, you just want to keep it as quick, this movement, and as seamless as possible for your pet's interests. 3, bring pee pads so your pet can urinate if they really, really need to. 4, you want to call the airline a week before travel and just reconfirm everything. Reconfirm all the details related to bringing your pet in the cabin. And the next one, 5, be aware that apart from registered service animals, pets are not allowed to travel in cabin or as checked luggage through the UK. So you can't use a flight connecting through the UK or flying into the UK if you're going to be traveling with your pet in cabin. And now the last thing on in cabin I wanted to talk about, and this is something that the pet relocation specialist who you'll meet soon shared with me, and I often see this in my course as well. People will say, you know, I can't put my dog or cat in the hold. They have to be in the cabin with me. They're gonna really freak out if they're in the hold. I can't do that to them, as if, you know, putting them in the hold is a form of punishment. And what Elaine, the pet relocation specialist, shared is that, well, she was talking specifically about cats, but I think this is a good insight overall. She said actually what she sees often with moving cats is they actually prefer to be in the hold than under the seat in front. That in many cases, a cat wants its space in the carrier, in the crate. It wants its space to go to the toilet, not, you know, right where it's sitting. It needs a little bit of space to move. And if they're under the seat in front of you, they can feel very cramped. They're smelling your feet, and it just may not be the best experience for them, even if you think that might be the best experience for them. So I think on this point, just broadly, it's really helpful to talk to other people, connect with other people, Facebook groups, whatever it is, my Move Spain Masterclass, who have moved with their pets already. You know, I have a lot of alumni who've done the course who have moved, and you want to hear it from people who've been there, done that, because often what seems like the right idea and what seems like is going to be best for your pet may not actually be the best case scenario. So I just wanted to point that out to kind of open your mind to that possibility. If your pet can't travel under the seat in front of you because of their size, for example, or because you choose not to, or it's not possible, then another option is for the pet to travel in the hold of the aircraft. But under the category of traveling with your pet in the hold, there's actually 2 subcategories. One is checked luggage and one is cargo. Checked luggage effectively means your pet travels through the normal baggage handling system, and cargo means that your pet travels as a special cargo consignment, as a live animal consignment, and there's more controls and, you know, frankly speaking, more protections for them in that route as well. Both are totally valid routes and can be done completely successfully, but they are different. So let's dive into each one, kicking off with checked luggage. So in this one, as I mentioned, your pet is traveling through the normal baggage handling system of the aircraft. So what does this mean? It means that there's no special handling team looking after your pet. It means that temperature controls in that area of the hold may vary depending on the airline, depending on the route. And it just means, broadly speaking, there is less oversight and control in the process. And one thing to be aware of, there are more breed restrictions when it comes to checked luggage travel. So, for example, snub-nosed breeds are almost never allowed as checked luggage in EU and US airlines. Now, look, it can sound really scary, this idea of checked luggage and of them just being another piece of luggage. But, you know, I want to make something clear is that thousands of animals and pets travel safely as checked luggage all the time, right? And it can actually be a really good workable option for shorter flights or direct routes. But I think generally what you need to understand is this route is just less regulated. So it comes down more to you, to, you know, picking a good airline and to being well prepared. Heads up though, more and more airlines are actually restricting or not allowing animals through checked luggage, so it's becoming a more limited option as well. But if you are looking for good airlines that do fly into Europe and do offer checked luggage, and the pet relocation specialist I recommend says are good airlines, they are, you know, at the time of filming, KLM, Air France and Lufthansa. Those are good airlines for checked luggage, where you can be confident that there's more controls within the checked luggage system. The other thing with checked luggage is there's a little more responsibility on you just to make sure that everybody's aware that there's a live animal, there's a pet on board. Now, obviously, you have informed the aircraft, but it is a good idea to remind the airline at check-in, at the gate, and once you're on board, remind the cabin crew just to make sure. These are just important little things that you can take care of to just make sure you're set up and your pet is set up for success in the checked luggage system. The other option for your pet going in the hold is live animal cargo. Now, this is a really popular option if people have the budget and are willing to spend the money, because this is an option that's specifically designed for transporting live animals. So in the cargo option, you've got specially trained staff who are checking on your animal at all steps in the process. You know, the cargo consignment, the crate effectively that your dog or cat is in, is being scanned, so we always know where it is. There's temperature controlled vans that transport the pet from the terminal to the aircraft. They're in a special temperature controlled area of the aircraft. And they also get last on, first off priority, which means that your animal is spending less time in the hold of the aircraft. But of course, you've got to pay for it. Yep, the two things to be aware of when it comes to cargo is, one, it's going to cost you more than checked luggage and more than in-cabin travel. So it can be up to 4, 5, 6 times more to move a dog, say, as cargo compared to checked luggage. Now, it's going to depend on size, on crate size, and various factors, but that's just something to be aware of. Now, one thing that I also want to let you know is that if you're moving multiple animals, the cost of cargo doesn't necessarily scale double, triple each time. It actually can work out per animal cheaper as there's more animals. So look into the pricing of cargo, even if you think it sounds like it's going to be outside your budget, if you're moving with multiple animals, because it might actually work out relatively more cost effective than you think. The other thing with cargo is you can't do it yourself. You have to work with a cargo agent to handle the process. So generally, when people are moving their pets in this cargo option, they work with a pet relocation specialist who can handle all the customs, all the cargo aspects of it, all the paperwork. So that, in a sense, is also an additional cost. So cargo is a good option for more complex routes, longer journeys, and for anybody who has the budget and wants to build in all those checks and balances for their animal in the process. Okay, now zooming back out again and talking about hold traveling with your pet in the hold, whether checked luggage or cargo, generally, what are some things you can do to set your pet up for success? So I've got a list here and I'm going to read it because I want to make sure I don't miss anything, but here's some ideas that the pet relocation agent I work with suggests. Use a high quality IATA approved crate. PetMate is a good brand. Crate train for at least 4 to 8 weeks before you fly. Add bedding to the crate so your pet is comfortable, plus an item that smells like you so that they feel calmer. Use a water bottle, like say like a rabbit feeder, for them to drink water rather than a water bowl. Sometimes people say you could put frozen water in that will slowly defrost, but if it defrosts, then it's going to slop all over the bedding, all over the crate, and your pet's going to be uncomfortable. Attach a bag of food to the crate so that the staff can feed the animal. Clearly label the crate with live animal / animal vivo, which is live animal in Spanish, and add arrows showing the orientation. Don't lock the crate. You want staff to be able to open the crate and feed your animal or support your animal as needed. And as I've said before, just make sure you're like a broken record. You're telling check-in staff, you're telling your in-flight staff, you're telling staff at the gate that your pet is on board. Make sure, that where possible, that there's temperature controls, etc., etc. So next, I want to move on to charter flights. As crazy it may sound to a lot of people, have actually become much more common for people moving to Europe or around the world with their pets, especially since COVID. Since COVID, airlines have really been cracking down and adding more restrictions in many cases on traveling, on flying with pets. And so a sort of an industry of charter flights, specifically for people traveling with pets, has cropped up. Now there's sort of two categories here. And the first category is more of the informal side of it that cropped up, around COVID, post-COVID. And this is where groups of people get together and pitch in to charter a flight. I mean, anybody can, if you pay money, right? You can charter an airline. Most people don't have the money. But if you gather a bunch of people and their pets, then you can split the cost. So say if there's 12 to 14 people who are chartering a flight or splitting the cost of a chartered flight, then it might work out to about, say, $7,000 to $12,000 US per person, including a pet per person. And obviously you can take luggage and things like that. So this is an option, and you'll see often people organizing in Facebook groups to make this happen. But I just want to give you a heads up about this because I've seen how it can really unravel for people. So the two key risks with this option is that you're all coming together with a bunch of people who have all agreed to share the cost. So if one person, and this happens, if one person or a few people pull out at the last minute, they've promised to sign up and pulls out for whatever reason before they have paid, then you've got to find someone else to fill it, or everyone else has to cover the cost. So it can be quite chaotic because you really have to rely on everyone to be getting on that plane. The next one is if there's an incident in mid-flight, and I heard, for example, about one where a dog had diarrhea mid-flight and the plane had to land, which led to cleaning costs and delays, etc. The plane had to land before it got to its destination. Then everybody had to share the cost of that. So it can be complex in that sense. So just to be aware. Now, at the same time, there's another branch here, and this is an industry that is really growing from what I can see online with the brands that are opening up or the airlines that are opening up. So these are airlines that are effectively private flights. You'll be traveling with other people that are specifically for people traveling with their pets and moving with their pets, around the world, in this case, to Europe. So, they've all got quite similar names. There's like Canine Jets, Woof Air, Bark Air. These are some common ones. So you can look up these guys online. Obviously what you're getting here is a more professional setup, right? Instead of everybody chipping in. So you're still going to have the higher cost of a private flight, but you get, more guarantees. But if you go with a company that is a charter flight company for people moving with pets, just make sure you check the fine print. See what the refund policy is. You want to be aware what you're stepping into. There are also companies that allow you to charter a private jet. So don't specifically for moving with your pet, but obviously allow that as an option. Private Fly, Mercury Jets. There's one, La Compagnie. I hope I'm spelling that right. I believe it's a French company. They're not private per se, but it's a really classy aircraft with fewer people and more space. And that is an option as well when flying with your pet. So obviously, for most people, the charter option is outside your budget, but I always think if it is of interest to you, price up, particularly looking at how much luggage you're able to take as well on the private flight and what it would cost to ship that luggage or to take that as excess baggage on a commercial jet. And also look at, if you're moving with multiple pets, what the costs are going to be relative to the comfort for your pet flying commercial or flying with a charter or private aircraft. So just want to present that option for those who really want to, push out the boat, or in this case, the private jet when it comes to getting your pet to Spain. Okay, now the next route is going by boat. Now, assuming you haven't got your own boat, you're going to go on potentially the Queen Mary 2. So this is a transatlantic liner that sails from New York to Southampton in the UK. People take it for pleasure, obviously, but also they have kennels. They have kennels where you can put your dog, for example, in the kennel and it travels with you. So why this is really attractive is, look, it just sounds a lot less stressful. The idea of sailing across the Atlantic with your pet, the pet's in a kennel, there's a dedicated kennel master, they have an exercise area, a lot of space to move around for your pet. You can visit your pet and you're at sea and it sounds wonderful, right? It's like taking a cruise. So this is a very valid option and those kennels do fill up. So a lot of people take advantage of this, but there are some things you just need to be aware of when you think about this option. One, obviously, it's not cheap. You're going to have to pay for the kennel space. You're going to have to pay for your ticket. So you want to price that out, what the ticket on the Queen Mary 2 is going to cost for you and your pet or pets. Two, you have to book quite far in advance, potentially 2 years in advance. It fills up really quickly, particularly when it comes to those kennels. I think while it sounds much more relaxing, the idea of sort of being at sea and visiting your pet, you have to be aware that there's a key aspect to this that it can be easy to overlook. This ocean liner, this boat, doesn't dock in Spain. It sails to the UK. So then you have to get to Spain, which involves additional expense, additional paperwork, and additional travel days for your pet, potentially in a car driving down. So I don't want to go into the details here because there's a lot of details, but you're going to need a Great Britain Pet Health Certificate before you get on the boat, because you're not sailing into the EU, and the UK is not part of the EU. So you're going to need a specific health certificate for getting into port in the UK, and you're also going to need a tapeworm treatment for your dog. And then once you're in the UK, you're going to need to get that EU health certificate so that you can come into, say, France. If you're going through the tunnel across the channel and driving down to Spain, you need the EU pet health certificate in the UK so that you can enter the EU. So you kind of got a double paperwork. So I've spoken to people who have done this option, and I'm not saying it is not right for everyone, but I just want to give you that perspective that I know people who have done this option thinking it would be much more relaxing, and it was actually much more stressful than they expected. It may be right for you, but just be aware of these additional costs, these additional delays, and effectively it becomes a very long journey for your pet. Often the best idea is just to get your pet as quickly as possible from A to B, not to draw out this period of change for your pet. And here you've got a week's sail, then you've got from the UK to Spain. It becomes a multi-step journey, and it becomes quite a long journey, which in and of itself could be quite stressful for your pet. And now one last route for the sake of being complete here is, what if you're driving to Spain from outside the EU? So this would be an example as if you're driving from the UK, you live in the UK and you're moving to Spain, or another land-connected country whereby you can actually drive to Spain. So in this case, it's very similar actually to the circumstance we talked about, say, flying from the US. You need to make sure you get your vet visit 10 days before you enter the EU. You have to have your pet correctly microchipped, the rabies vaccine up to date, and then you have to have the EU animal health certificate correctly filled out by a registered vet. And depending on your country's guidelines, you need to have it endorsed as well. Cover those things, and then you're good to enter the EU. Now, remember to be clear about the timeline of the vet visit and any endorsement happening within 10 days before you enter into the EU. But one thing to be clear, say your final destination is Spain, but you have to pass through some EU countries to get there. You have to enter the EU within 10 days of having that health certificate endorsed. But at that point, it is valid for 4 months for travel within the EU. So once you've entered the EU within the 10 days from the endorsement, you have 4 months to move through the EU to get to Spain. It's probably not going to take that long, but just to be aware, you have some leeway there. So I'm going to jump on a call with Elaine Green, who's the founder of Pet Relocation International, so she can share some more nitty-gritty, some more valuable tips so you're set up for success for moving your pet or pets into Spain. Hey Elaine, how are you? Thanks for jumping on a call.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. How are you?
Very, very good. So I thought it would be great to jump on with you, a pet relocation specialist, just so, you can share with us some of the key things that it's important for people to know as part of this really big part of their move. Pet relocation is a really fluid area and things are changing. So I would love to kind of have you share some of your expertise. I got a few questions for you, if that sounds good.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
I wanted to ask about sort of unforeseen disruptions that can happen sort of on the travel day or week, heat restrictions, flight changes, certificate issues. Is this just stuff we have to roll with if there is like a flight change or a delay, for example?
Yeah, and the what I always say to owners is just make sure you have a plan B. That's the fundamental of every travel, is make sure you have a backup. So if, for example, we are moving a client's pet and they're traveling as cargo, we will always ensure that we have a plan B in place if that pet doesn't fly that day. And that's really important. If you are wanting to take your pet with you, make sure you've got a flexible ticket. Make sure that you're able to accommodate potentially 2 or 3 days delays.
What's the most common kind of crate or carrier mistakes that you see? And if I see online IATA approved, can I usually trust that that's going to be true and it's going to be okay?
No, you really can't. You have to make sure that you get the right information. Go and do your research with that crate.
Okay.
Find out all of the measurements and those ventilation holes. That's the most important thing. I would always say get in contact with the person selling the crate if you're getting it from Amazon, and ask them for those specific information. And again, if needed, send them the live animal regulations requirements and say, please, can you confirm that you meet these requirements?
Are there any signs that a pet shouldn't fly? About their temperament, their age, the breed? Is there anything we just need to be aware of that, you have to go with another route, whatever that might be, if potentially, by sea, for example?
This is where, again, it's very difficult with vets, because vets want to please owners. I think as an owner, you have to be really honest with yourself. If you know that there is an issue with your dog, then you have to be really honest with yourself and say, is it going to be possible for my dog to fly on an aircraft? If you know the answer is no, then you need to look at other options, exactly like you said.
Are there any hidden or overlooked expenses that people should prepare for? Is there anything else that kind of pops up that suddenly people don't realize that they maybe should budget for as a percentage over what they are budgeting for?
I would go back to vets. You have to be really stern with vets, because what they'll try and do, if they can, is they will add plus. So they will say, oh, you need to get these additional vaccines, you must get this parasite treatment. It's not needed. If you are moving to Europe, if you're moving to Spain, then the requirement to move into Spain is a valid rabies vaccine and a ISO compatible microchip. No other vaccines are required. Don't be scared to get a second opinion with costs, because there is a huge disparity between vet fees. And I mean a huge disparity. So if you feel that the vet's charging you a lot of money, don't be afraid to go and get in contact with another vet and ask them for the price.
So someone's watching this, last question, and they're, say, 6 months out from travel. What should they, from the move, what should they start doing now? Is there anything they can do now to start preparing?
I would say check your vaccines, make sure that your vaccines are up to date, that there aren't any lapses in your rabies vaccine.
Specifically, rabies.
In your rabies. Make sure that you have an ISO compatible microchip if you don't have one implanted and have a new rabies vaccine given. And the other really important one is, if you can, start crate training. The most common issues for dogs and cats traveling and having upsetting experiences is because they're not crate trained. If you can get an IATA compliant crate 3 months out, it's brilliant, because it really gives your pet time to get acclimatized to that crate, and for all of your family smells and everything to become familiar with your pet and that crate.
Okay, have them eat some meals inside it, maybe take a nap inside it, put a toy inside it, whatever it is.
Yeah, and pets' smell is so heightened. So even though you think, oh, the crate's just been sat around, it's not going to really make much of a difference, it really does, because all of the family smells, those homely smells, penetrate into the crate. And so it's that safety, it's that den for them. And having the longer the crate's in that room, the longer the smells are able to attach to the crate, and the calmer your pet will be.
Okay, so let's recap on what I think are the 4 key takeaways from this video for getting your pet successfully and happily to Spain. So one is, you want to make sure you get that vaccine and certificate timing right. You want to get all the paperwork aspect right pre-move. 2, you want to pick the route, the method of travel that best suits your pet's breed, size, temperament, and also your budget and what feels right for you. And in this one, I would say, don't just assume what you think is most likely to be right for your pet is necessarily the right one. There can be some unknown unknowns here. So this is a great one to connect with other people who have actually already moved their pets, and also to look at videos on YouTube of there's people documenting the experience of moving with their pets. 3, and this is something that Elaine stresses so much, and that's, she says, crate training, crate training, crate training. Really, it's so simple. If you do it with lead time and you do it with intention, you can really set your pet up to have a more comfortable journey if they're going to be going in a crate, in the hold of the aircraft, for example. And the 4th one is really deciding whether this is a process that you want to take care of yourself or you want to get professional support. pet relocation specialists exist. You've met one in this video, and they can really take care of all the logistics. They can set your mind at ease. They've done this a million times before. Because look, like any aspect of your move, if you have the budget and it's something you want to do, then working with a professional can really help lower your stress levels, because it's great to know that there is someone else, a professional, who is taking on some of the mental load of that really important piece of your move to Spain. Guys, if you want the cheat sheet of this video, head over to spainrevealed.com/pets. I've put some links down below based on what we've talked about in the video. And if you want to keep watching and learning about more ways to explore Spain, moves to Spain successfully, then check out this video that's appearing up here, and I'll see you over there in a moment. Okay, ciao.